second, and then you can get started. Okay, you're on.
Okay, now. All right, good evening. Again, traditionally, thank you for being in class. We're going to continue with the portrait show. And this evening, we're going to start off with a very particularly charming and freaky and extremely talented and very un-Renaissance painter, whose name is Giuseppe Arcimboldo. And Giuseppe Arcimboldo was born in 1526 and he died in 1593. And he was a citizen of he was born in and became a citizen of and worked most of his pieces of the city of Milan. Okay, and Milan was under the Sforza family. As a matter of fact, if you ever go to Milan, you go to the Sforzesco Castle, which is this magnificent, immense castle in the center of the city with towers and a moat and a whole trip. And inside this incredible place are three stupendous museums, one of which has Michelangelo's Last Pietà, the Rondini Pietà. And it also has an immense ceiling painted by Leonardo da Vinci, who spent a lot of time in Milan. As a matter of fact, Leonardo was responsible for having come up with the idea of canals that would render Milan a seaport by virtue of creating these two, which still exist, these two big canals with those dams that rise, which he invented, like the one they're using at the Suez Canal. Okay. Having said that, let me jump into the share screen, and we'll start to look at this gentleman right here. What's happening? Okay, so this is a self-portrait. It's a really, really beautiful, beautiful, beautiful drawing by Arcimboldo. Now, you have to understand that Arcimboldo was a great artist in many ways. He did some really amazing prints, etchings. He did woodcuts beyond a lot of drawings done with silver, silver point and inks and charcoals, brown inks, sepia inks, and so on. And he also did tapestries. He designed many tapestries that he would then send them to the Low Countries and have the Dutch nuns weave them, and then he would take credit for them because he designed them. And he also was really, really a super expert in the practice of stained glass windows, as we'll see in a little while. But what he is known for today is this. Now, you have to understand that these paintings were done in 1590, this one, okay? And it is a very un-Renaissance-ish element because it is beyond freaky. I mean, so this goes in the same kind of strange realm as a Hieronymus Bosch or as a Bruegel the Elder. There's using amazing fantasy and refiguring objects into something else. One of the greatest followers of this concept was Salvador Dali. And also Magritte collected images. He only had black and white ones, but he did collect images of Arcimboldo. So in this case, it takes a really fantastic amount of craftsmanship to be able to render the flowers and to render the clarity of the fruit and vegetables that he uses. But of course, the fantasy of putting it together in such a convincingly interesting image really, really tickled a tremendous amount of nobles all over Europe who vied with each other to be able to buy an Arcimboldo. Consequently, he took off and he started going around Europe, both selling whatever he made and getting commissions. So this is one. Here's another. Now this is a almost opposite for the sort of bucolic, glutton that we just saw. But this is made out of the bark of a tree and roots, and the deer horns are made out of branches because it's dealing with nature. So you have a lot of wheat, you have flowers, you have leaves, you have grapes, apples, etc. And the pimples are growths from branches that have been cut off the roots, as you can see both in the nose and in the chin. It's amazingly haunting image, but it has whimsicality. And there's certain little things in there which I greatly identify with. Like, for instance, taking a double cherry and putting it in your ear, which I used to do that when I was a kid all the time. And this is a very interesting image that was done much later, of course, because it's a puzzle picture of Napoleon. It's done by Cooper Hewitt, and if you look at it very closely, you see that Napoleon, his hat, which is like what the Italian carabinieri are wearing today, is actually an eagle. So the head of the eagle is where the little cross that I'm showing you is, and then the body, the two legs, and then the one wing on the right and one wing on the left, and the entire face is nothing but dead bodies, because Napoleon certainly was a major murderer. And so, but this situation was done very much like the Archimboldo. And it kind of shows that even in the beginning of the 19th century, end of the 18th century, there were people that were looking at his work. Okay, so this is Maximilian II of Austria, who was an emperor, and he was married to a lady who he married her for geopolitical reasons. She was Maria of Spain. Okay, and this is a painting that is in Ambras Castle in Spain, and it's done by Archimboldo. There are no expressions in the people. It was very dangerous, by the way, to paint the nobility with particular expressions. So the vast majority of painters, as we've seen, will make faces that were puzzlingly serious and not very interpretive of emotion. The ones that had the most emotions were usually the poor people, the people in taverns, monks, women in the kitchen, etc. But not the nobles. The nobles had this sort of stoic look. Okay. This is the jurist, which is fantastic. His body's made out of books and his collar is letters, and he has a fowl for a nose, a fish, actually two fish, in the chin and in the lips. The lip is fantastic, and a chicken up above. This is the librarian. And this is a waiter. Now, look at the amphor, the pot for and then the nose is a glass. And then there's another glass on the bottom with a handle, and the handle is the mustache. I mean, the amount of energy in pure fantasy that this guy put in, he looked like he just had a phenomenal amount of fun. And you don't really see that a lot in the Renaissance, except for people like Bruegel, when he does his little like peasant feasts, or sometimes hell. People painting hell, and there they let their imagination take off and do stuff. This is all flowers, okay? But this is one of the four seasons, the springtime. It's a rose is a blush. It's fantastic. Look at how elegant this, he's got an orchid in the front. How elegant the shoulder and and jacket are, and how whimsical this little flower up at the top, right? Great stuff. This is the summer, obviously. Oh, look at the artichoke. And this is autumn with mushrooms and, pumpkin and the grapes and, all the fruit, the potatoes and the apples and all the fruits that grow in the autumn. What's really cool is that his mustache is a chestnut. That's where the cover of the chestnut is open and the chestnut pops out. It's really fantastic. And of course, the barrel that holds on to the, to the food as it was harvested. And this is the winter time. Look at that. How magnificent that tree is. And how the lips are those mushrooms that grow on the side of the trees. Pure fantasy in an amazingly fantastic and kind of joyful, strange way. This
Alex,
is
Alex, was he very popular? I mean,
yes, he was. He was very popular amongst. Yes, he was. But it was the only one that was doing that. No one else was doing that.
Hmm.
Okay. And so but he was also popular in the sense that he also did, while he was doing this stuff, Mondrian, who everybody knows Mondrian for doing those fantastic, five color squares.
Yeah.
Black, white, red, blue, and yellow. But he also did flowers, a huge amount of really beautiful, beautiful flowers throughout his career. And he did it to take a kind of a break from the stoic, research of the heaviness of the avant-garde. And he just caressed nature. That's what I think that this guy did. Look at the chicken in the face. It's all birds, obviously, peacock feathers and, little baby bird nest, doves. I mean, it's phenomenal. Air and fire. Really amazing stuff. Cigar cutters and weapons and things that you cut the flint from the rifles and all that. And this is earth. And I love this one. It has it's luscious with mushrooms and goats and deer and mountain lions. And it's just phenomenal. And they're beautifully painted. So no one else, this is water, no one else would have done anything near this for another 400 years. I have a friend of mine named Sergio Boldrin, who is one of the best mask makers in Venice. And he has made a mask that's like this big of the first Archimboldo that I showed you tonight. I'm going to get that mask. It's a dimensional paper mache painted. It's beautiful. So, Archimboldo, boys and girls, and these are more. This is an Archimboldo. It's a bold Archimboldo. And, oh, by the way, this one is an upside down bowl of fruit. So if you take this painting and hang it upside down, it looks absolutely like a bowl of fruit. It doesn't look like a face at all. Then you turn the painting and it's this character. Let's see if I can find it. This one. This one. Phenomenal stuff. What do we have? Okay. He doesn't limit himself to make those faces. Those faces are many, many more that we can't see because he just did too many of them. And there's also a huge amount of books. Okay, this is one of his paintings that has been translated into a tapestry. I'm looking specifically for, here's that bowl. So that's that bowl of fruit that we saw before, right? I'll show you again. So, wait. Yeah, no. What the hell is it? Bear with me for 1 second. Yeah, this one. So if you turn this one upside down, right, it looks like the one, it looks like, no, I lost it. Damn it. Anyhow, the one that I showed you before. This one. Okay. What else did he do? So that you know, these are his stained glass windows that are in the Santa Caterina Cathedral in Milan. Archimboldo. Absolutely magnificent stuff. This is from the lives of Saint Catherine. Okay. Again, these are all stained glass windows. It's a huge, immense amount of work, and they're beautifully realized, beautifully painted, and beautifully composed elements. Again, Archimboldo, and one would never know. Okay, this incredible tree of sanctity is another, complete, immense fresco done by Archimboldo. So you should know who the dude was. Beyond the faces. Fantastic work. And who is this? This is René Magritte. And René Magritte, with his nose in his pipe, was a very, very, very surrealist and strange Belgian. He lived in Brussels, which at the time, Brussels and Zurich were the capitals of the bourgeoisie bureaucrats. And he considers himself a spy amongst the bourgeoisie. He would wear a suit and his blue coat and the black shoes and a red tie. And he would, go to all these insufferable parties where people would talk about business and soccer. And he would make notes. He would take a napkin and just make notations. And then he would go home and do paintings that were critical of the attitude of those people. As such, he was a master painter in that his paintings looked like they are done with a tremendous amount of boredom. They're very easy to read, but they're childlike. You don't see the thick, you don't see the expression of the gesture. You don't see the thickness of the paint. You don't see an absolute composition. What you're seeing an extremely bland way of putting down something that looks incredibly insane. And the two things play against each other. It's like a stoic insurance agent who jumps up at a table and starts to do a striptease. You would never think that an insurance agent would do that. Okay, so Magritte was of that timber to a certain degree. So his portraits were very interesting, and they covered a lot of territory. This one, is an unbelievable thinking object, because she knows that she's covered and she's kissing someone and she's wondering what he thinks of her being covered. But actually, she's kissing someone who's also covered, who's thinking the same thing. So they both know and they both don't know at the same time. Yet they're together. It's a phenomenal concept. So you can see these are bells, and you can see that this part of the face exists as an interior because the mask of the face has been taken off. So this mask, the outside, would fit perfectly into this one. Okay, a little bit of the same happens here. So he used the concept of portrait, and he created a way of seeing our face that is totally and completely unlike anything we had ever seen before. And it's disturbing because we are faces. And so, everything that we talked about in this class, how important it is for us to be able to identify with a face, etc. To the point of even painting a portrait without a face. So he is, or painting a face and a body, and the body is a face. Self-portrait. And this one, what's interesting about this one is that we keep looking at him, and as we keep exploring his face, we start to see that what's cut along the face is actually the portrait of the sky. And the portrait of the sky is coming over the portrait of his face. Interesting stuff. And beyond portrait of an actual face, oh boy, this is. I am afraid that this one is too small for me to talk about. Well, too bad. Let me see if I can find something that is a little bit more apropos. Well, he did a lot of paintings of the sort of Belgian people who live in the same place, who move at the same time, who move at the same time, like they all come home from work at the same time, wearing their bolo hat and black shoes, and they go into these little houses that look exactly the same. And there was Pete Seeger had done a song called "Little Houses." Little house, tiki taki, and they all look just the same. And it was after a painting by Magritte. I just wanted to show you one thing if I can find it. Unfortunately, I probably will not. Okay, strongly suggest that you look under Magritte and try to understand the beauty of what he does. In this case, Botticelli's Primavera, one of the characters, Botticelli's Primavera, is superimposed over this guy who has no concept, no idea in looking at nature. Then in essence, he's missing the idea. The idea is happening behind his back as to the beauty of nature. So they're really social political statements that are brilliant. And he uses the concept of a portrait to, not always, this one, for instance, is a very strange painting because it's a day sky with a night scene. Okay. And now we're going to jump into Picasso. Now, Picasso, everybody knows Picasso upside down. And Picasso was by far, did more paintings, he did more art than anybody ever in the history of human beings. He was the most prolific artist that ever existed. He has done over 35,000 pieces of art that we know of. And that's not including a huge amount of drawings and little clay things that he screwed around with his kids, etc. This is a Picasso self-portrait. And what's interesting about this Picasso is that it was done at a time when he was hanging around with Modigliani. And both the color and the fact of one empty eye is very Modigliani-ish. And the shape, the reduced, simplified oval face looks very much within context of African masks, which at the time he used to collect. This is a little bit later when he started to screw around with the idea of cubism. Okay. Later on, he would catch holy hell because his buddies would bring this painting up and tell him that he had a Hitler haircut. And he detested Hitler. As a matter of fact, I'll tell you a very quick story. When, of course, Picasso painted Guernica, right? Guernica. And during the Second World War, he was in Paris when the Germans had conquered Paris. And he had Guernica hidden. But he did have postcards of Guernica on the table. And these German officers, the more erudite Waffen SS officers would come and look. They wanted to look at Picasso's studio. And he hated that, didn't like the Germans, etc. The German military. And this one officer came in and looked around the studio. And then he saw a postcard of Guernica. He picked it up and he goes, "So, He says, "You're the one that did this." And Picasso said, "No, you are," which was very interesting, because they wiped out Guernica completely. All right, so this is the time which goes after 1906, 1907, which is when Picasso painted Guernica, about that time. So that's the beginning of Cubism, the beginning of putting down color more as an emotion than as interior decoration. But he does do some things, like, for instance, he's wearing a herringbone jacket. And you can tell by the way that he started to do this little pine tree, herringbone stuff. This is another very intense drawing by Picasso. Picasso was a mind-blowing expert in drawing. He was like, the best artist in drawing in the 20th century by far. I mean, all you have to do is look at what he did when he did the series of etchings for Vollard, who was his patron. So the Vuillard series, I believe it's 111 etchings, are masterful drawings done with a straight tool rather than using the acid, etc. It's much more difficult to do. Okay, so here you see that he's starting to really, really, really take liberties. He is talking about the complexity of holding a brush with the hands, not the proportion of the hand. Okay, the sort of bottle body and the simplified way that his thumb is coming in, holding onto the brushes in his palette. And of course, what he does with both profile and eyes that are looking as if it was 3/4. So he likes to make the motion of a portrait. Like what do you look like if you're in profile? And then 2 minutes later, you turn and you're looking at someone, and then that person turns 3/4. That's an experience that deals with time. A painting doesn't have time, but Picasso made it. He made time in the painting, so that he made, a figure that could be turning in many different directions, frozen into the absolutism of a flat pictorial timeless space. This is a much later, much later painting, which is getting to become really sad because he's beginning to realize when he's in his 70s, he died in his 90s, by the way, even though he smoked 3 packs of Gaulois a day and drank like an enormous amount of booze, but whatever. So, if he hadn't done that, maybe he'd still be alive. Who knows? So this is one of the series he did of the artist as an old man, and it's very self-critical. So is this one. This is when he was 85 years old. Beautiful drawing. And you can see that he put a profile of when he was younger, and then the painting as he felt at the time, old, wrinkly. Look at all the wrinkles in his elbows, Very, very, very interesting. This one is 89 years old. He did this in 1971, just before he passed away. And he is an artist who is sad, who is melancholy, who is a little bit angry, but still has power. And this is the last painting he made before he died. And it's a self-portrait. And one cannot express just how powerful this image is. This is a man who lived an unbelievable life of art. Many people consider him an incredible son of a bitch, including many of the ladies that he used to go out with and that he used to live with. At the same token, he had a tremendous soul. He could be extremely whimsical and generous and compassionate. He was every adjective you can possibly find in an adjective book, glued together, put together in a cauldron, and put in a Picasso fire. Look at this portrait, even the color and the beard, and it's confrontative. Look at the eyes, go back and forth from eye to eye, and see how he felt. He cannot believe he's at that point. really, really good. And excuse me for 1 second. Yeah. Okay, so this is still Picasso. This is Picasso the Heyday, like in the 50s. And Picasso would take as a subject matter paintings that he perceived to be really, really important. And being a Spaniard, he loved Goya and he loved El Greco, even though El Greco was half Greek, half Venetian, and you know, and of course he loves Velázquez. And so Las Maninas, the very famous masterpiece of Velázquez, became a subject matter of a lot of his paintings. And he put down how he would feel. Okay. So this little girl that's you know, that's whose head is right next to the window where the waiter's standing there on the right hand side, and on the right hand top. This is how he perceived of her. Look at what he did with her dress. Look at what he did with her face, how she is a profile, a front, and a 3/4 at the same time. So she's moving, whereas this one is standing still. And this is a Picasso the whole trip. Look at what he did with the dog underneath and with the little kid kicking the dog. A thing all by itself, you know. And then the master and the complexity and the brightness and the power, the lightning stroke of the master painting that incredible canvas, and the clear mystery of this guy in the window behind him. I mean, it's an amazing, amazing, amazing bunch of stuff. And look at what he comes up with. Again, the little girl, the dog, Velázquez. Just an incredible, amazing stuff. The power of simplicity. And he came up with the most varied and profoundly interesting results of this painting, of looking at this painting and feeling it, and then redoing it. Look at the faces. I mean, just a couple of little lines, that's it. Okay. And this, of course, I'm putting this in because being a portrait class, etc. But this is Gertrude Stein. So Gertrude Stein was an American collector who was extremely rich. She lived with a woman named Alice B. Toklas. Gertrude was a poet. She made these, what was perceived at the time to be very avant-garde poetry. Some of them were based on the power of repetition, like a rose is a rose is a rose is a rose, etc. She was extremely arrogant. She was very, very conditioned to appreciate art. So her apartment in Paris was from floor to ceiling covered with paintings that she would buy from a group of artists that would come and hang around her place. Picasso was one of them. And she really liked Pablo Picasso. She liked him a lot because a lot of other people liked him as well, as she, by her own admission. Okay. And at the beginning, she couldn't understand him. And the more she saw his work, the more she accepted it. And then she wanted him to do a portrait of her. And she kept going to Picasso's studio, which was a real pain in the ass for her because it was up on the 3rd floor in La Bâtie-Savoie in Paris. And the La Bâtie-Savoie, along the staircase that led from downtown Paris up to the hill of Montmartre on the left-hand side. It's a kind of a glass building where they used to do the laundry. And there were a number of studios there because there was a lot of skylights and a lot of glass facing north. And Picasso was there for a long time and had a studio there, him and his whole entourage and his first wife that he got when he married a woman who was part of the Russian ballet in Rome, as he was doing one of the few times he traveled out of Spain and France, when he was doing the stage set for the Ballet Russe. Anyway, so she would go and pose for him, and he tried, and he would destroy it. He tried, and he would destroy it. He tried, and he would destroy it. And he just kept saying, "I can't get you. I can't get you. I'm having a hard time. I'm having a hard time." So she got kind of, you know, she was very disgusted and disappointed, and she paid him. And she said, "Forget it. I'm just one of the people you don't know how to do. The minute she left, he did this portrait of her, okay, which is in New York right now. He did this portrait of her. Again, you can see how his attachment to Modigliani was. And when she saw it, a week later, she looked at it and goes, "Oh my God." She said, "I don't look like that. I look a lot older. You know, that's not the way I look. It doesn't look like me." And he said, "Not yet, but it will." And 30 years later, that's exactly her. Okay. So it's a masterpiece and a wonderful, wonderful painting. What's really interesting about it, he did something very Spanish, which is he did the decoration of this couch that has tapestry done in a very, very, very simple sort of collaged way where you can get a sense of what it was, but you can't quite put your finger on it, you know. And he also gave her a kind of an authority, her position of leaning forward with her, you know, with her hand on her lap, coming forward and kind of looking critically to something to our right. The other hand kind of patiently there. And also the whole volume of her, she's this mass of soft, you know, sobriety, was very much her. I can go on a whole section about her and her studio and what she did and what she said, etc. But you can look it up. So these are some more portraits of Picasso. No, we looked at this already. We looked at this already. Et voila. And this is Matisse. Matisse, who came out of Le Fauve. Le Fauve, meaning those very colorful paintings like Derain and that whole crew that followed Impressionism and Post-Impressionism and Pointillism. It was a very, very short period of incredibly bright, amazingly declamatory colors. It was a consequence of Gauguin's liberties that he took with color. Matisse is a child of that world. By the way, the world that means the wild beast in French. The Fauve, which a critic walked into a museum and saw this stuff against the wall because he saw pas de peintres. You know, these are not painters, these are wild beasts. He saw the Fauve. And they all heard him and said, "That's right, baby, that's what we are, the Fauve." So they accepted the game, you know, the name. And so Matisse came out of the world. Matisse was also kind of he had a love-hate relationship with Picasso. They hung around together at the beginning, especially. They knew each other, they competed against each other. Matisse would do something, Picasso would try to do the same thing, but better, or vice versa. Picasso invented, quote unquote, whatever that means, Cubism. And Matisse never really understood Cubism, although he did try many, many, many portraits in Cubist matter. Actually, the one that he is the most successful at is a piece of sculpture he made, more than a painting of it. He was much more of a colorist than Picasso. His paintings have shadows that are bright, like this one, that has the green in the very center, so that she's illuminated on the left and she's illuminated on the right. But what he did is that he left the green underpainting because Matisse used to do what the Renaissance used to do, which is to say that he would do a green earth underpainting first and then cover it up, because when you apply flesh tone over green earth, if your flesh tone is a little bit too bright, the green earth underneath makes it a lot more flesh-like. So in this case, she just left it. And it's very theatrical because it looks like she's illuminated on the right and she's illuminated on the left. And sure enough, behind her, it's exactly what's going on. Different colors, okay? So these are all trials of Matisse. You can see how the shadow, rather than darkness, is just cool, it's blue. So here he tried to use color as a symbol of cool and warm. Same thing when he did this self-portrait. If you basically took a black and white photograph, this light blue is not much darker than the orange in part of his skin. But it's a lot cooler by virtue of being blue as opposed to yellow and red, which is warm. In here, you can see how he exaggerated that, okay? And so he tries a lot of different ways of doing portraits, a lot of self-portraits. He also greatly appreciated Van Gogh's work. Okay, this woman with a hat is considered to be one of his masterpieces, comes straight out of the Fauve situation where her face is almost a turquoise, greenish, cool under the hat. Very bright hair, pure red, top lip, pure alizarin, bottom, only the color of flesh. Very, very, very interestingly done painting. Again, cool and warm. These are a series that he did of portraits a la Picasso, because Picasso was very keen in doing just 5 or 6 brushstrokes, and with that capture the totality of the image. Okay, this is a self-portrait by Matisse, done in 1900, very serious, but this is one of the few paintings that he's done that was super thick. Usually his work is very thin. This one is a wonderful portrait because he implies what happens on the left-hand side by virtue of having repainted what he had done and left it so here's what he did. He painted this part darker, and then he decided he didn't like it, so he took the color of the background and painted over it, but you can still see a shadow of it. It's very strange. Also, he was highly influenced. He went to Morocco, part of his life. And in Morocco, he was highly influenced by the decoration under tapestries and on the Islamic decorative tiles. So after he came back from Fez and, and 3 or 4 places that he went to Morocco, he became infinitely more decorative, and he began to understand why the decorations of Gauguin, that to begin with he didn't do, but then later on he jumped into it. Very interesting, very wonderful painting. This one has a little bit of this portrait has the core of power that Picasso, had given. This is, excuse me, fantastic, Madame Matisse. This one is melancholy. It's masterful to see the function of that orange in that world of blues. The little whimsicality of those little sort of Chiquita balls in the hat. Fantastic, the way the feather pops out and comes into our world. It's an evening interior painting, and so he really captured the essence of the place by that. This was quintessentially misunderstood Picasso, but well, it's not his. It's not his. This one is. This one is a self-portrait. Where is it? Sorry about that, people. Pesky computer here. Hold on. I wanted to show you. Okay. So this is the portrait of this woman. Fixing the oranges and the apples inside or the lemons, whatever how they are, inside of that bowl, in that world of color, is beyond masterfulness. This friend of mine told me that the Metropolitan Museum had like one shelf specifically of this painting last summer, something like that. But in any event, it's, this painting is like, it's like a fish bowl with red water in it that you dive in. And as you swim around the world of red, you're finding all these different things. He took the wallpaper and the decoration on the table and used it on a flat Japanese way against the background. The table is only told, we're only told that that's a table by one line, this line right here. It ends here. That's it. That one line, but also the perspective of the object that are resting on the table. Where are we? We are inside of this world joining this lady at this table. A chair is waiting for us on the left-hand side as we enter the painting, and we would have our back to that background in that window. So it's fiery red, intimate interior, and springtime outside. And those little sprinkle of fallen buds of trees on the ground, very, very interestingly beautiful, are shown by this little buds of still life that are falling down the trees of these deer horns in the background. Phenomenal, phenomenal painting. So, again, too many things to look at. I suggest, again, that whatever I show you, maybe you can take notations and then look at it on your own and come up with your own versions of what you like and don't like. So here is Mary Cassatt. Mary Cassatt was an American painter who was absolutely disgusted with the lack of culture in this country, and consequently, she moved to Paris. And in Paris, she befriended particularly Degas. She became an extremely good friend of Degas, and they actually worked on some of the paintings together. Okay, and Degas was a very difficult character to get along with, by the way, but she got along with him really well. Mary Cassatt, look at this painting. Now, in all fairness, okay, this painting was done about 35, 40 years after Manet started to do his black and white, his portraits where the faces were relatively flat and really non-descriptive, but the paintings contained a lot of pure white and pure black. So Manet, not Monet, Manet. For those of you who have a difficult time figuring out who's Manet and who's Monet, think of A comes before O. So Manet came before Monet. Okay. So Manet started off being a relatively straight figure painter, but then he started to flatten out his images thanks to his Japanese stuff that he collected like everybody else did. And he started to use a lot of black and white that we discussed a couple of weeks ago, by the way. And so you can tell that she is of that school. And as far as the color of this wonderful piece of furniture that she's on, this is very much like the pastels of Degas. But also Degas took a tremendous amount of hints from her. So they both learned from each other. It wasn't just a one-way deal. This is a phenomenal composition. We're sitting there with these people. But look at how flat the water is. Look at how flat the whole back of the rower is. And she was accused, I think, very stupidly and unjustly, of being too much of a quote unquote woman painter because she did a lot of painting of mothers and children. Well, does that mean that in order to be if she had done battle scenes, then it would have been all right? So I think it's really like a stupid criticism. She felt a penchant for woman. She felt a penchant for mother, and she painted it. She felt a penchant for place, for atmosphere, for seasons, for costumes, for beautiful interiors, for flowers. Why not? And she painted them. There's no accusation. Look at that. I mean, it's magnificently done. Like the reflection on the silverware is great. The color sets of the woman sitting on the left-hand side is divine. The subtlety of color between the couch and the wallpaper, and it's actually cloth. In the background is beautiful. Look at what she did with this arm, the way she went around with the brushstroke to show that it's coming forward in perspective towards us. So she's done some wonderful things. I mean, look at this is an incredibly powerful work. This is a woman that used to work for her. She was like a housemaid. And the yellow against that kind of crazy silvery white, and the flesh being just on the other side of white, become just in the process of becoming soft flesh. Color-wise, it's beautiful. And this is almost opposite, symphony of colors. Very simple. So she's very, very competent. Look at the attention the woman is paying. There's I get the heebie-jeebies looking at some of the frames. This is typical of post-impressionism, where you do what you want and the hell with the rest. So who cares? Why should she fill in the bottom right if all she really cared for was this woman? There's another masterful painting. And people say, oh my God, how corny, she did a little dog. Look at the relationship between this Claude Chazan and this dog. And with your hand, take that dog out of there and look at how empty the painting is. That dog should be there. And so what? It's a beautiful little dog, man. It's a flea dog. And there's some amazing things in this painting. The masses of the soft sort of silk, Chinese silk covers of those lounge chairs. But then something that is really strange, which is, look at the negative shape, this kind of faded chocolate negative shape, absolutely flat, getting lighter near the atmosphere of the window. But it's this flat world next to this amazingly lofty, round, playful world. Great stuff. And this one is so tender that look at the little girl's face. She's looking to see what her mother's doing to her foot, leaning on her mother's knee. It's a masterful piece. I saw this last summer. The Art Institute of Chicago had it at Washington, D.C. for a Lent thing. So this is very Toulouse-Lautrec-ish, 1898, about the same time, by the way, because when Toulouse-Lautrec started doing those posters of the Moulin Rouge, Moulin de la Galette, those clubs used to hang around in Montmartre, he started doing those incredible posters of Aristide and La Gillot and all that stuff. And so those were highly, those made a great impression on a lot of artists, and they started copying the flatness of Toulouse-Lautrec in the same way that Toulouse-Lautrec flatness came straight out of Japanese art. This painting is a wonderful painting of a woman bathing in the toilet. This is all a question of the drawing, because the color of her back is all exactly the same. There is no cool, there is no warm, there is no chiaroscuro. It's pure Japanese. Okay, and I mean, we can go on and on. As opposed to this, all of a sudden she's jumping in with like brushy gestural impressionism. And this one looks like it was painted in the 50s, doesn't it? That's Rue de Marignane, where she used to live until she died. So, beautiful flowers. You can smell these. The girls at the opera in the box. Look at the composition of that fan in relationship to her back. This and this, it's just amazing. And then the gaze is carried to the left by the boxes in the background. Fantastic stuff. Same level between the flower and the hand. Very dégage. Actually, I think this painting, this charcoal, was done together with Degas. I'm not sure what he did or what she did. To me, it looks like he did this part, because some of his dancers look like that. Look at the power of how forward this piece of furniture becomes. What is she doing? She's at the loom, tapestry loom. But look at how assured, of her brushstroke she was. She just slopped them in there, and then she paid a lot of attention to the face. Who was the first one to do that? Ingres. Ang, because when he was drawing in Rome, he was drawing a lot of the bureaucrats, that Napoleon had put into Rome to exchange the favor for their support. And so he went as a Frenchman. He went to Rome, and he was the guy that had those two famous portraits of Napoleon, not from life because he never met Napoleon, but from what do you call it? He rented miniatures, and then so everybody wanted an Ang, and his paintings were too expensive. It took too long to do, so he started making drawings of people. He would make the faces look just like the faces, but then just sort of put down a few lines for the rest of the body into nothing all the way around. And that's exactly what she's doing. Of course, 60 years or 50 years after Rank. Okay, we're going to switch over. Otherwise, we're not going to have time. And this is Boccioni. And Boccioni was the famous, amazing futurist who died super young in his 30s. Umberto Boccioni, he was one of the Milanese expressionists. I don't know why this happened. If you excuse me, let me just. Okay, so that's what he looked like. He looked like this. And he hung around with Marinetti, who was kind of a fascist and the head of the futurists. All those guys kind of leaned to the right. They wanted to do away. Too complicated. All right. So this is. He started off doing very typically Italian classical paintings that artists were doing in Italy during Impressionism. And the ones that were doing stuff that we may call impressionist were called in Italy the macchiaioli, which means those who make little stains. Macchia is a stain. So macchiaioli are the stain makers, which would be in French or in English what Seurat did in pointillism. Okay, so this is the Italian version of that. This is dead before he became a futurist, and this is dead when he came back from Moscow. He went to Moscow when the Tsars were still there, before the 1918 revolution. This is when he went to Paris, and he started to collect photography, and he started to do images that were very fauvish that he picked up in Paris using photographs as a point. Over here, you can see, his penchant for Picasso and Braque and the futurist, whom he had met, by the way, when he went to Paris. Okay, and so he did images that were very strongly placed together, almost like a jigsaw puzzle where you put down masses together. That all that stuff is out of Cezanne originally. Okay, so one thing that he really wanted to do, which is really evident in this painting, was that he wanted modernity. So in this case, he is looking at us and he's saying, look at what's going on in the world. People are beginning to build modern houses for the poor people. And you can come and join me in that beauty. So he left this empty. Okay. And then he started to say, the problem with Cubism is that it's frozen. It's frozen mass. So what we're going to do is we're going to kick it and shake it up. And therefore, he kicked it and shake it up. This is a guy on a horse. Here's the guy with the boots, his head, his arms, the horse's face, the neck, the rear end right here, and the legs, making a perfect triangle on this side and a perfect triangle on this side. Anyway, all right. So these are some of the portraits that he made, portraits of his mother. Hold on, let me get into that. All right, this is a beautiful portrait of his mother. I just saw this in Italy at the Magnani Museum. It's an amazingly beautiful painting, because what he does is that he paints the volume. He actually makes the brushstroke go around the volume. And he uses this kind of otherworldly color. He mixes a whole bunch of colors to create flesh, just like the pointillist, except the pointillist did it with dots. He does it with brushstrokes that follow the volume. Okay. This is a self-portrait that he did very, very, very quickly, going over with a black line on top of oil. This is some of his earlier work. Okay. And this is work that he did a la Picasso, of course, as we said before. Okay. This painting has a wonderful portrait of this woman sitting in a cafe. And there's a waiter over here serving her stuff. And she has her hands across her breast, and she has this sort of degenerate, happy smile. And she is sort of like the leader of this world of confused festivity. Another beautiful self-portrait. So that's what he did before he jumped heavy duty into something like this. You can see the face in here, the eyes, the nose, the mouth, which is moving. The world is moving. You're moving as you're walking around a face. If you're sitting across somebody who's looking at you, and you get up and walk over to the side and see what the person looks like on the side, and as you keep walking, you keep looking at the face, that face changes, and it changes with time. But in a painting doesn't have time. So what the futurists did is that they combined all of those different ways of seeing things in time on the same fundamental canvas, which is basically what the Cubists did. But what the futurists added to Cubism was movement and speed, which was very much part of the whole trip, because they were very modernist. And look at this. This is not a portrait, but that's a cavalry attack. You can't get more cavalry attackish than that. This is a portrait of his friend Ferruccio, beautifully, beautifully, beautifully done. So, Boccioni. So here we have Goya. And I don't know if I can blow this up. I'm gonna try. Well, let me just do it this way. These are very disturbing historical paintings, okay? So let's just start looking at them and see what this person can do with portraits. So here is death hovering over a dying person with very somber colors, and the portraits are really illustrative of the mood that one would have of death. And this is the one that I just showed. That's a Goya painting, and it's Saturn devouring his son. Okay. Now, what happened to Goya? Goya started out being a court painter for the Philips of Spain, and he morphed into doing this series of bullfights, and then series of sort of freaky dark tales of the farmers and of the poor people. What do you call it when you throw salt behind your back? Anyway, all right, and then he started going around Spain while the French were there, and there was this big French civil. There was the big French War in the 1815, at the beginning of the 19th century, where there were massacres all over Spain because the French were there to conquer Spain. The Spanish didn't want the French there, and so there were amazingly horrendous war crimes committed. And Goya went around recording them. I forgot what the name of it is, but the something or other of war. And this is a consequence of that terrible, terrible, terrible world that he was maneuvering himself through. Okay, this is Fuseli. Fuseli was a British, even though it's an Italian name because his parents were Italian, but he was a British pre-Raphaelite from the middle of the 19th century. Really, really, really crazy stuff. Look at this donkey or mule on the left-hand side, and this kind of strange, almost monkey god, across this quintessentially French European, Venus. And it's a nightmare he had. It's called the Nightmare of John Fuseli. Okay. This is a guy. This is a Dutch painter, Van Oostranen, Dutch Renaissance artist, who was active in the early 1500s, in the early 16th century. Look at those teeth. So the colors and the attitude, with kind of a freaky hat with donkey ear, is it's funny. He's got glasses. He's holding onto glasses without the lenses, and there's this very strange apparition in the background of kind of a monstrous woman. So this is part of the sort of a Hieronymus Boschian Low Country. Sort of brutalism to a certain degree. Here's another one this is German, Hans Bentrung. The difference in the colors and in the way that the form is treated, Let me see. It says Death, it's Death. Death and the Maiden is a painting by German Renaissance artist Hans. It's Beldung, also known as Hans Beldung Grien. It was in the early 16th century, so early 1500. He's holding onto her hair. So these are, very, very, very disturbed images. This is an amazing painting, actually, but it's so disturbing. The interior of a jail. And this is very Hieronymus Boschian, but it's not. I mean, it's a 15th century at the time of Hieronymus Bosch. Okay, it's a Flemish artist, Mette Bloss. So when you look at Hieronymus Bosch and you look at Elder, at Bruegel, they are two of hundreds of artists who at the time were doing in Holland that kind of a world. Okay, it was a combination between, social politically, there's a lot to say about it, but that's what it was. Okay, this guy here on the right-hand side is a portrait of Toulouse-Lautrec when he was a kid. Okay, this is a self-portrait of Toulouse-Lautrec. You know what, people? We're gonna pick this up next week, okay? Because we don't have any more time. But we're gonna be looking at this lady, who's Angela Edwards, who's a British artist, contemporary British artist, who does these beautiful paintings, but the work that she normally does doesn't look anything like that. It looks like this. Anyway, so we look at a little bit of that, and we're going to be looking at Iranian art, Iranian portraits, which are phenomenal. Really beautiful stuff, and etc. So all people that you haven't seen. Okay.
Thank you.
So good night, and I'll see you next week.
Good night.
Thank you, Alex.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Alex.
Thank you.